Okay, yeah, I didn't do the commercial. So sorry. But hey, come on. It's too good of a show to just wait for a commercial. So, I mean, we've done some great shows over the years, and I don't think I've felt so excited to do a show until tonight. So, and I know, Dan, you probably don't remember, but I did join Joe Dog one night, and you were part of that show. So, you know,
Well, we've done a
quite a
couple of years
few.
worth of shows now, twice a week. So
Right. And then when you do so many, you just kind of start to forget. When was that? It's like I was talking to one of our upcoming guests, and we're discussing the last time he was on. He goes, and I was thinking it was just a couple of months ago. No, it was like 2 years ago. Oh my God. So yeah, you have too much fun in these shows and you forget. But
yes,
so, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Paranormal. I have my lovely co-host, Miss Annie, right here with me. And for those who don't know the man, the myth, and the legend who is here with us tonight, let me kind of give you an introduction that he might say is better writing than what he sent me, but we'll see. This is Mr. Dan Hollifield. He is the senior editor and publisher of, and if I say this one wrong, please forgive me. You can correct me on it. Alphelion Webzine. Is that right?
aphelion. It's Greek.
Alphelion. Okay. And it's the oldest active sci-fi and fantasy amateur writing website online. Now, since 1997, Aphelion has served as a floating writers' workshop and helping over 500 new writers refine their skills and transitions into professional authors. That's what Dan has done. Apart from his work with Aphelion, he has also contributed to Casebook, the Jack the Ripper website, in 1995, where he scanned and resized photos, participated in online chats, and engaged in discussions on the site's forums. He is an avid reader of books on Jack the Ripper and other unsolved mysteries, maintaining an open mind about potential suspects, which we'll talk about tonight, and the possibility of resolving this particular historic crime tonight, right here on Paranormal. But that also took place for him during the Autumn of Terror. Well, not in 1888, but what you've worked with so far.
I'm a senior citizen, but I'm not that senior.
Right? We all got the senior. I just love changing out cameras, then you can't see all the white. Yes.
Mhm. I just go with it. I earned every one of these.
I'm still trying to figure out where they came from because I don't know if I've earned them yet.
I've raised a lot of teenagers.
Oh, hey, there you go. That's definitely going to do it.
Hmm.
She won't admit it. She'll never admit it. But I'm sure her kids gave her every gray hair she's got.
Mine?
Yeah.
Heck, they still do.
Well, that's about what it boils down to. The kids can do that to us. Yes. So let's talk what we're here for tonight. Now, tonight, I plan on giving what other investigators have done and evidence they've used to uncover this evidence. And so by the end of tonight's show, we will be able to say what or who Jack the Ripper was. And hello, Miss Evie. So that's going to be the fun part. But I guess we kind of got to go back because I'm curious of one thing. Jack the Ripper only claimed, 5 or 6 victims in a matter of a few months. And he is still considered probably one of the most notorious serial killers to this date. Am I right?
Yeah, because they didn't catch him.
Yeah. I mean, he even
It's one of the
H.H.
greatest
Holmes had.
unsolved mysteries.
There you go. H.H. Holmes claimed more lives that we know of, but Jack the Ripper himself would still go down as being the most notorious over H.H. Holmes. And of course,
And
for those who've been part of the show, you know we've had those guys on about H.H. Holmes. So, sorry.
it's all down to the mystery of it. I mean, you have the canonical five victims, and people argue about whether or not there's more or there's less. Uh,
Yeah,
People argue about the forensic evidence, the inquest statements, witnesses, who did what. Uh, it's a lot of fun to just explore. Um,
yeah. Well, I got to ask the first question, probably the most interesting question of the night for me. What got you involved in wanting to know a lot about Jack the Ripper?
um, it was either an article in Reader's Digest or I checked out a library book that
Aha,
was concerned with unsolved mysteries.
right,
And yeah, it keeps my mind busy. And
sure.
basically, you got to remember, I started looking into stuff like this back when I was 10, and I'm 65 now. I should know a whole lot more than I do, but I'm approaching it as this is fun. You know, it's
Yes,
nice.
yes.
It's nice to be able to uh, just look at everything and go, that makes sense. That
Yeah,
doesn't. Um,
sure.
and it's all for your own, basically your own entertainment, if you can be allowed to use a word like entertainment when you're referring to horrific murders. But it's
Right.
historical. You might as well be talking about uh, was Akhenaten's death actually a murder, or did he fall down and bump his head?
Well, I mean, we
I
can
mean,
look
if
at
you're going to
other.
talk about whether or not an Egyptian pharaoh was killed because he was unpopular, um, you know, same thing.
True, true. So, before we get deeper into it, I'd like to also bring into the fact that you are an author as well.
Very, very
And,
small time.
well, I still say anyone who puts a book out is still, I mean, you know what it's like. We're called the starving artist because we don't get paid that well as an author.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. No, I do have two books out right now. One of them's out of print, but it should be being reissued sometime soon. Um, I've got short stories in I think four different anthologies. I keep getting asked to contribute to others, but I'm busy trying to finish another book, so I don't have time to just drop everything and write a fresh story from scratch.
right.
Um, Writing's is something that I'm driven to do. I couldn't stop. I'd love to be
Well,
able to stop. I'd have a whole lot more free time. I could go
I would
fishing.
say I don't know what free time is. When I do have free time, it's not free time because then I'm doing something else. So yeah. But have you ever thought about writing about your discoveries on Jack the Ripper?
I have for a long time planned, well, not planned, but I have outlines of two different fiction Jack the Ripper books. One of them was supposed to be take each of the five victims, assign a different suspect to them, and present it as close to this is the guy as I can. But each chapter, each victim would be a different Jack.
Right.
And then there was another one that it would have been as open-ended as the mystery itself. There would never have been a solution, but you'd have been kind of dribbled little bits and pieces that would lead you to this suspect or that suspect. And basically, by the end, you'd go, I'm going to have to make up my own mind.
I love it. I love it.
The drawback to that is I have never wanted to sit down long enough with Jack the Ripper in my head to be able to do the stories justice. That's not the kind of writing I gravitate to. I generally do adventure stories, basically. Whether
Yeah.
they're science fiction or fantasy, it's basically, hey, somebody winds up in a situation that they never expected to wind up in, and they've got to either get home or, throw the ring of doom in the volcano or whatever, to lean towards somebody else's work. But
Yeah.
it's just adventures.
Yeah. I mean, oh God, that reminds me. What was his Neil Barrett Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Name sound familiar?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was on the station once as a guest, and he said almost identical to what you said as to why he stuck with sci-fi. It's almost identical. So I think you find when whatever you write, whatever you feel comfortable with, that flows the most.
Yeah. You've really got to be able to separate yourself from the characters that you're writing in order to do an effective villain. I mean, everybody hates this guy villain.
Right.
And I like my characters too much. I write very bad villains, I'm afraid. I'm learning,
Yeah.
but most of the time when I have an adversary for my hero, it's either a natural disaster or it's a big nameless corporation or organization or
Yeah. I guess I did not make a disclaimer, a warning for this, so I need to do that now. We are going to show some pictures tonight, and there's a possibility. I think I've gone through most of them pretty well, so none of them are like that actual photo that we showed before. Yeah.
I would recommend we don't show the Mary Kelly photo.
Oh my God, that
would be very disturbing to the casual viewer. As a matter of fact, it disturbed me when I had to scan it and resize it for Casebook back in the 90s.
And even now I still look at. I've seen a lot of crime scene photos over the years. Doesn't bother me. In fact, one of my favorite sites, I don't even know if they still have it, was like rotten.com.
Yeah, I used to go on there. I don't know if they still have it or not.
I don't either. But they after so long, they started to add the forensic photos. And this was where they would tell forensics investigators or people studying to go look at these photos. And you would see some pretty horrific photos.
Really gross.
Yeah. The only one that bothered me was the guy who survived from that motorcycle accident. That was the most disturbing one. But
I can imagine.
I don't know.
His face was just...
I am the same age as you. Yeah. And back in the day, I didn't bother me at all. The older I get, the more stuff bothers me like that.
Yeah. Well, you two are the youngest here, so what can I say? Dan's short of rolling his eyes at me.
At 65, I'm no longer youngest anywhere. So
Well, when's your birthday? What month is your birthday?
November.
Then you are, because I'm October.
She's done research too, just so you know. Dan's like, oh boy.
Hey, I told you I wasn't an expert at anything but the stuff that I've been doing at the factory for the last 45 years. So, and
Right.
we're not here to talk about household insulation. So,
Oh gosh, there you go. That's true. Yeah.
But where
All right.
would we be without it?
cold.
Extremely.
Well, right now I'd rather be cold. It's still over 100 and something degrees outside, so I'll take the cold any day.
Oh yeah.
All right. So what we are looking at, just so you know, and I did not take the clearer version of this, just because some images were a little harsh to see, as you noticed, I pointed out. So what I did find interesting about Jack the Ripper's cases was something that you mentioned pre-show, Dan, was they actually made these little things for each murder. And
these were published in the newspapers.
Yes. Yeah. So
And
some sketch artists had a great job of going back and doing this. But I couldn't imagine what kind of stomach he had to have to do some of those pictures. But a total of, well, I still get mixed answers. Some answers say 6 victims, others say 5, where 5 was Mary Kelly. So, but that is confirmed victims that we know of. There's others that potentially could fit that profile, but there were certain things that didn't match, so they threw it out.
Could it have been a copycat?
It's entirely possible.
Yeah, very, very possible.
I've been involved in online discussions where somebody was going, well, you know, the forensic evidence only matches 3 of the victims, and another person, another time, well, 27, that's what I think it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the connections.
Usually people stick to the main most famous 5, basically.
Yeah. So that's what we're sticking with for tonight, and it's more based on a piece of evidence that was uncovered, and the information that centers around it makes you wonder who exactly this could be, the evidence that they came up with. And Dan asked a great question pre-show, so I will probably mention that again here in a little bit. But going back to the horrors, as we will call them, for this particular case, it all centered around Whitechapel. And I think that's the only reason why they use these cases as the Jack the Ripper cases. Anything that was outside of that realm that looked anywhere similar, they didn't consider it. I don't think so. Not by what you can read, like through Scotland Yard and all that. So yes, but these are definite images that will give you chills. But I like I said, we do have some pictures we're not going to show that would be nightmarish. But let's go to one of the more popular ones that we were talking pre-show, Dan. And as anyone can tell, it's kind of also our background. Only one murder took place inside. The rest were out. And we were talking pre-show about how you could actually see this. And this image, this drawing, was probably one of the best ones to give you that, because it was so dark, the only way to see would have been with a lantern. Right?
Yep. You can see in the illustration there are lights coming from windows, but they are not very bright.
No.
The
No.
policeman's lantern was one of his greatest tools.
Yeah, definitely. And then, of course, this probably at best portrayal of not being so gruesome. But gosh, you told me who this was. I can't remember.
Because there's not any really obvious mutilations, but there is the throat has been cut. I would like to say that this is Liz Stride
Right.
From the night of the double event.
That's right. And that's where some people believed there was more than one killer because of the double event.
Well, they weren't that far apart. It was physically possible to run from one site to the other in the time concerned, but you've also got to take into account if you're going to mutilate a body, that's not going to be instantly done.
Exactly. So let's look at a couple of potential potential suspects. That's the word I was trying to think of. One of them would be Mary Kelly's boyfriend. And we were kind of discussing that pre-show as well. And that would have been Joseph Barnett. Now, Joseph Barnett lost his job during this time. And so, and some say that he was arguing quite a bit with Mary, also because of the fact that he lost his job, money was a problem. And we kind of talked about how, today a quarter has practically no value unless you give it to a little child who can go get a candy for a quarter. But back then, something like this could have been like hundreds of dollars, right?
Been enough to buy a day's worth of food and maybe a place to sleep at night if you were not going to go to a bar and drink it all up.
Right. And which was one of his problems too. Mm-hmm. So what else could you tell us about Joseph Barnett?
Well, he was quite fond of getting the newspapers and reading about the crimes to Mary in the most dramatic way he could, because he was afraid that she'd go back on the game because he wasn't bringing money in, and she had one means of putting food on the table.
Yep.
And he didn't want her to go out on the street. So they basically had a series of small arguments that escalated up into larger arguments, and it was a very on again, off again sort of relationship. They'd live together for a little while, and then he'd be shown the door or get upset and leave. I think pretty much equal, but it must have been really difficult to consider yourself the breadwinner and wind up not having lost your license to do your job.
Right.
Probably through the fact that you just didn't have any money to renew it when it ran out, and have to go stand in the jobs seeking line and just take whatever you could get in order to get by.
Day laborers position, yeah.
Basically, yeah. You would have to find a different job to get paid for just about every day.
Mm-hmm.
And this is there's a lot of people nowadays think they understand extreme poverty, but in the past, extreme was very extreme.
Yes. Well, the closest, yeah, I would say the closest America probably could claim to come to it would have been during the Great Depression,
Hmm.
even when you saw bankers throwing themselves out windows, you
Yep.
know, and or in financial investors and stuff like that. They lost money so fast and so quick they gave up their lives the same way. But that still wasn't the extent of poverty that these guys were going through in 1888.
Yep.
So,
In the Great Depression, you saw soup kitchens and bread lines. There were similar things run by charities in England and Europe um, in the 1800s. Now, this is the Industrial Revolution is going on.
right.
People are losing their traditional jobs because factories are getting more and more prevalent. Um, Steam trains. This is a time that the London Underground was being built. Um, well, the tail end of it. It started much earlier, but um, there's a huge disparity between the well-to-do and the just barely staying alive.
Yeah.
And a lot of those folks in London were packed into Whitechapel.
And a lot of them, basically, if I remember right, it's been a while since I actually pulled that part up, but a lot of them were doing what they could to share homes
Hmm.
at that time.
You could
Yeah.
have what would be normally a one-family house and have 5 or 6 entire families living in different rooms. One family in one room. The
Hmm.
the whole building would be full of different families,
Right.
and everybody trying to get by, everybody trying to find a job, competing with each other even.
Well, there was another individual who was considered to be a potential uh,
Suspect.
suspect. Yeah, I just feel there's another word to use other than suspect here because I just don't want to be the same.
Person of
But
interest.
person of interest, I like
That
that one.
that one's
Yeah,
good.
yeah. And that was Aaron Kozminski. Now, Evie mentioned in the chat the same thing that she believed, or she was leaning towards, as we put up there for everyone to see, that she was leaning towards Aaron Kaminsky. Aaron Kaminsky had um, a little bit of two different ties, both Russian and Polish. Okay, and there is a reason why he is considered a potential suspect or potential person of interest. But before we get there, what could you tell us about Aaron Kozminski?
Um, there's not a lot that I remember, but he was one of the police's uh, favorite people of interest. There was a list of 3, and he was by some of the I believe it was one of the police commissioners. He was considered the most likely.
Right. And for people who don't know, this is the drawing of Kaminsky right here. So you kind of get an idea of what he kind of looked like for that period. And now he was also, oh, I had that right in front of me and I lost it. Was he not one of the boyfriends also?
Um, I believe he was not closely connected to any of the victims. He was just someone that folks in the area just kind of noticed. He stood out. He um, had a hot temper. apparently. So it has been reported. I don't know. But I'm really not sure exactly why they thought he was such a strong suspect. Yeah,
Ah,
there was a if I remember, an attempt at an ID from a potential witness to just prior to one of the
well,
murders,
I'm
and
glad you said that. Yes, because in a couple of police accounts, and his name was listed on quite a few of the police reports, that he was seen in the area near the women before they were murdered.
well, evidently he lived in the area.
Yes. Yeah.
So
So it's kind of hard
and
not to be seen.
yeah, yeah. But then every serial killer has uh, a comfort zone
True.
that they tend to work within.
Yeah.
They might, in the case of nowadays when you got really good transportation, they might take the victims elsewhere, but they got them from the comfort zone.
Right. So while Evie's mentioning in the chat room here some of the things before I get to it, there was a hint that they thought Aaron Kozminski was possibly Jack the Ripper because the fourth victim, Catherine Eddowes, was killed in September of 1888, and they actually found some of his seminal fluid in the area. But that didn't necessarily mean that he was Jack the Ripper. It just said, hey, the guy was there and had his little fun. But it was a shawl that she had that's okay. Now I actually saw the real shawl in some video explaining this, but they found blood on it. Now the shawl looked like a one of those old welcome mats, sort of, unique and different, but I guess you have to remember this is also a time where it was colder, so they would wear something thicker to stay warm. Um, but this particular shawl had blood on it. And it was the blood that started to make people wonder. Well, they kind of tossed it off as, oh, it must have been her blood. And of course, in this time, we didn't have forensics like we have today.
Yeah.
But some guy went to an auction and actually got his hands on that shawl. He bought it and had it tested. His hopes and beliefs was that it was Aaron Kozminski. Well, let me settle everybody's beliefs on that. It was not Aaron Kozminski, sadly. But DNA did come up with another individual, another person who was at one time considered a potential person of interest. I used it right this time. But there was another individual that you and I talked pre-show also, which got some people interested in as well. He was posing as an Indian herb doctor throughout the United States and Canada. He was Irish born, but they called him a medical quack. And that was Francis Tumblety. Kind of not a name that rolls off your tongue, just to say.
Mm-hmm.
Some considered him an eccentric troublemaker because he was always in trouble with the law. So, and he kind of had a weird demeanor about himself. Do I actually have him in here?
There is a drawing of him. Yeah, I don't know if you've got it, but
Well, I have some images, but apparently none of those are of him. So bear with me. I'll get that up for you. But tell us a little bit of what you've learned about Tumblety over the years.
if I remember correctly, he was somewhere between a snake oil salesman and a con man, and purportedly he had a collection of shall we say female organs in jars.
Ew.
Yep.
Yes. And now I've heard of people collecting stamps, or
Sure, yeah, that would be the better way of doing it.
yeah, but I don't know for sure if he was a doctor or just purporting to be one, but he had access to other people in the profession and could get, shall we say, relics of postmortems and pop them in a jar and put them on the shelf.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, for some people, that would be for shock value. For some people, that would be, oh, look, isn't this neat? It's hard to tell which sort of fellow he was, but he was kind of
Tumblety was unique. I'll just go with that.
unique. But it goes along with the selling the snake oil, just patent remedies and all kinds of things, and trying to stay one step ahead of winding up in lockup.
Yeah, definitely. So those would be some of the really good pieces of evidence that would say this guy here could be potentially Jack the Ripper.
Certainly worth looking at. I mean,
yeah. Well, now I want to kind of mix up things here and show people why these two individuals, last two that I mentioned, are somewhat of a unique character, because the shawl that they found and that they decided to test was not of something of that time. In fact, it was a stained silk shawl that they found. Silk. And what makes this shawl important is that they believed that the person who provided it was able to get it from a very wealthy location, such as in the time Poland or Russia, because it has those particular ties to it. Now, one source claims that it was just blood. Another source claims it was both blood and seminal fluid as evidence. Okay, which one did they take to get their DNA evidence? What I understand still to this day is the blood. I guess that would be probably hold more potential securities in this case. But I can look at Tumblety and tell you, sorry, folks, it's not him either. I know everybody's like, come on, just get to it. So, yes, the master of suspense. If they can pull up DNA from that far back, what do they have it to test against?
exactly.
This is my problem with what they claim as the evidence. So we go back with, police reports. Well, okay, we had, and I'm not trying to brag and drop names for shows, but it's been a while since we talked him, but we had, I forgot his name. Oh man, he was a great detective out of Australia. He brought down all the Australian mob members and everything. And then on the 50th anniversary of JFK's assassination, he decided to come over here and get all the evidence, not by what they put in the Warren, the Warren report, but the actual eyewitness accounts that the police wrote down. That's what he went off of. And he discovered who shot JFK, which we've talked about in there.
Yeah,
Okay,
I remember that.
so
okay, everybody
yeah.
get a drink.
Yeah, that's the rule. When she does that, you're supposed to drink.
Yeah, when I adjust, everybody gets a drink.
Oh, if I have to wait on that, I'm going to be very thirsty.
Right. So
can I ask a question? Since you've done so much research on this, were these victims ladies of the night?
You have to remember the time and the place. They never set out to be, but if they were down on their luck and needed money, that was the one reliable way of getting enough for a meal and a bed for the night.
Okay. Well, the reason I'm asking this,
They weren't professional hookers, no.
okay,
They were basically housewives, seamstresses,
victims of
babysitters.
circumstance, basically.
Yeah.
Okay. Considering the era, was it the Victorian era? Wasn't it?
Yeah.
During that time, okay. Did they really, really look into it because of these women's situations? That much? I mean, really push.
well, I think
actually the opposite is the opposite is true. They wouldn't have pushed until enough ladies of a higher class became frightened.
Right.
That
And
they could wind up in the same situation.
That push came from Mary Kelly's death.
Well, could be. She was not. There's some mysteries about Mary Kelly. Really, was that actually her name? Because she did go by 2 or 3. There are a lot of Mary Kellys wandering through this ripperology here. It was a common name for ladies to give to a policeman when they didn't want their real name written down in the big black book.
Right.
It's sort of like Jane Doe, but
yeah.
The only reason I would say I believe that it would be Mary Kelly's event was she was the only one that was not murdered on the street. She was actually murdered inside of a building where the person could take their time and do everything.
In her little one-room apartment, yes.
Yeah.
They are some nasty pictures. If I recall correctly, my mom had a book on him, and they did have photographs.
I've seen them. I've seen
I'll
them.
have to look downstairs in the bookshelf to see.
Yeah, I would do that.
I don't want to go to bed on that.
I was going to say, don't do it when you need to go to bed, or don't do it when you need to eat. When you need to get something out of your stomach, I would say go for it. But
thank you, EW.
All right, so let's take a moment. Again, the testing, a silk shawl. Over the time, there was several murders that we know of, and of course, they had some interesting artwork that they used, as we can see here. This would be the 5th victim. This would be the one on Barnett Street. And as you can see, they did have their wonderful renditions of how they do it, which is pretty cool. But again, you can see here, as we mentioned earlier, it would be so dark that they actually had to use their lantern to see what was going on, only to find that they found a mutilated body. Okay, so the uproar, as I would say in this particular case, wasn't more based on the fact that somebody's doing this, but more to the point of who's doing it and how do we stop them? Right?
Yeah.
Dan, I see
And a
you
lot of
look
the
at these
progress got.
pictures. Go ahead.
I remember them quite well, actually, because I had to scan each and every one of them and resize them for the website for Casebook. And the ones that I got to look at were, uh, by the time that I got them scanned, they were about the size of a sheet of newspaper.
Wow.
So I got to see individual brushstrokes, etch marks, whatever, depending on whether they were drawn or engraved or whatever. These are Police Gazette and newspaper illustrations. So they would have put the people that made their living doing, police drawing, the police news, people that made their living as professional illustrators. So the artwork is quite good. If you look at it closely, there's not any cartoony bits in it. There's no exaggeration or anything. People look like people, basically.
Yeah. Very well done, for sure. And you can, I got one more I'll put up here in a second, but you can tell that when they did these drawings, they did, I'm thinking, I want to say they were told to be very cautious of what they put in. So, you can see where they didn't show it detailed as what you would see in an actual photo. Excuse me. But then you would come along to other parts where, and I'm glad they got this kind of not so easy to see, because you could actually see stab marks and different other things in there. And that would eventually lead to, oh, hey, there's the torso one.
Oh, yes. Proof that there was a second serial killer in London at the same time.
Yeah. I didn't even realize I had that in there.
Yep. And where they found that torso eventually became Scotland Yard.
Yeah.
The building was under construction at the time.
Joe actually put in the comment that you and I were talking about earlier.
I heard that was a royal too.
Well, we're not going to bring too much into that, but what we will state at this point is that the royal did have enough eyewitnesses around him and his locations did not match.
So he had an alibi, basically.
Yeah. But remember, okay, now, Annie, you have to remember, we had the guy that is related to H.H. Holmes, who also believed and was waiting for evidence from, the FBI to reveal whether it was H.H. Holmes or not.
Weren't they going to exhume him or something? Or
they didn't have to. They had evidence. They had more than enough evidence. So
I have to step away for a moment. I will be right back.
Okay. So what we see here from what's being described, H.H. Holmes was not the actual killer, was not Jack the Ripper. However, a lot of his stuff was very similar, and that's what made people understand or want to accuse him of it.
Yeah, connect that. Well, if these things were so made public like that, he could have done the copycat thing.
And that's a big possibility, to be truthful. That is a very big possibility. And I do have to say, folks, you got to be lucky that we're not sharing the one gory picture, because even my tummy kind of rumbled on that one. But we've gone over a lot. And Aaron Kozminski, which would be considered to be one of the most prominent suspects remember we mentioned that there was a shawl that was found, and the shawl itself had both blood and seminal fluid, but they also had Aaron Kozminski's seminal fluid on one of the other victims, which
And
probably
it's a shame that they just can't try to match that. I mean,
they didn't match. They did not match, and that's why he was not considered a suspect after all.
So he was exonerated.
He was exonerated by that.
Yeah.
So we run down to the last potential people, and as we get there, we start to think, oh my goodness, can we figure out who the person is? What's going on? Well, I have to mention there is one suspect that is listed by a individual who, through her research, this is who she believed it was. Okay, I will tell you who this person is in a moment. But yes, by her research, her name was Sarah Bax Horton, and she is a research and medical records person, and she has actually done a lot of deep digging into Jack the Ripper. So she wants to say that it's potentially this guy. While somebody else is leaning towards the opportunity of it being, let's see if I can pull this one up. Yeah, this isn't as easy as I can do on my other things. This guy. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of hard, they both look a little suspicious. They both But I don't think it's going to be as easy answer right away. So let's go back. Sarah Horton did go and name this one gentleman that I first brought up. Let me bring him back up again for you. Let's see what Dan says about him. Does this face look familiar in any of your time?
I want to say he looks like John Kelly, but then again, it was a very...
Well,
there were a lot of faces like that.
His name is Hyams.
Okay.
That's what they named him at the time. As the man that Sarah Horton has claims that is responsible for at least 6 women that were murdered in or near the Whitechapel area between August and November of 1888. Now, she does, this Sarah Horton does state the names, and I'll give you them, so if anyone just kind of curious on the names. Martha Tabram. Mm-hmm. If I say the names wrong, forgive me. You guys know me. I'm not great with names. Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Annie. Uh-oh.
Yep.
Elizabeth Stride, Kate Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. And they were either destitute or prostitutes who had their throats cut and bodies butchered in horrific attacks that shocked, well, they say shocked the nation, but I'm at a point to say they shocked the world. Because even still today. Well, the reason she leans towards this guy is because her let me see, make sure I say the right name here. Her grandfather worked on, I was hoping it would say great-grandfather, but no, her grandfather worked on the Ripper investigation. He examined medical records and witnessed depictions of the man seen with female victims. Remember I said there was one? Before they were stabbed to death, leading all evidence to go to this guy. Now, he was a cigar maker who lived in the area where the murders were committed, and he was epileptic and an alcoholic. Now, I have a problem with this. If you're familiar with epilepsy, remember we were talking about the so-called chisel? Epilepsy would make it, and alcoholism would make it really hard to do a straight line.
Yes.
But according to her research and her grandfather's investigation back in the time, their notes kept bringing up Mr. Hyams quite a bit. And medical notes taken from various infirmaries and asylums revealed that his mental and physical decline coincided with Ripper's killings period. So they escalated between his breaking his left arm in February of 1888 and his permanent committal, yet permanently set in an insane asylum in September of 1889. Now, for the first time in history, they are actually claiming, without a doubt, this man, Hyams, is no doubt Jack the Ripper. No comment, I'm assuming.
I'm just going to have to say extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Thank you. This, by all the evidence they've come up with, the DNA testing and everything, this is who it leads to. I have problems. I studied psychology, so I have problems believing that with epilepsy, he could do that.
Well, unless he had a seizure in the middle of the act, should be able to physically do it, but would he have the necessary psychology to actually begin such a career?
Very true. Very good point.
It's just a question in my mind.
Okay, how many? Let's do a quick trivia quiz for everyone out there before Dan answers. How many victims had body parts removed? Annie, do you have a guess?
4.
No, not a bad guess. Pretty close. Any of you listeners? I know there's a delay, so let's see how long it takes for them. Dan, you know the answer, don't you?
Fairly certain, yes, but only because I know when the obverse was true.
Right. And of course, the one individual who had his fun little souvenirs, yeah.
Okay, well, couldn't they? I mean, I know, yeah, they couldn't match him up, but what he had and what was missing, did that total up?
Mm-mm.
You know what
I'm not
saying?
sure anybody. I'm not sure anybody bothered to research where Tumblety got his souvenirs from.
I think that would be that would be about right. And
Now,
Joe
if he had been a serious suspect, then yeah, the cops would have been going through inquest reports and medical examiners' reports, trying to go, hey, well,
yeah.
But so, nobody ever did.
Let me go back to one thing. Remember, we talked about the shawl being very unique. Okay. A Russian con artist, a Polish barber, an Irish-American quack, and even the eldest son of Edward VII have all been accused of being the man who, for one summer, did all this. And then, of course, disappeared without a trace. Well, let's see if I can do this really fast. In 2009, an historian claimed to have uncovered another potential suspect, one who fitted a modern forensic profile of the killer but had, until then, been overlooked by his fellow ripperologist. Mia Troe said mortuary attendant Robert Mann, who lived in the area where the killings took place and had a good knowledge of the anatomy, would have been regarded as a prime suspect had the modern profiling techniques of today been available to the Metropolitan Police back then. So, there is a potential other suspect, but we'll probably never know the truth to this day anyways. And for those that are still looking for the answer, it was 3 victims had body parts removed. So, but yeah, we can see the evidence that's been brought up to this date, and everybody leads right now to Hyams as the actual person because everything fit within there. And of course, Sergeant Harry Garnett, who worked the Jack the Ripper cases, had actually listed Hyam on his report quite a few times. So some believe they had him in their hands, but at the last minute, it was too late. It was done. So who knows? Who knows? Dan, I want to thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
And remind everyone where they can actually see you on other shows with Mr. Joe.
Well, you can catch us on Stupid O'Clock on Thursday nights and Saturday nights. You can catch me after Stupid O'Clock on Thursday nights and Saturday nights. So we start at 9 on Thursday, and my show ends at 1 a.m. on the Friday morning. Then we start at 11 p.m. with Stupid O'Clock on Saturday nights, and my show begins at 1 a.m. Sunday morning. Like I said, it's for night owls. And if you're really, really lucky, you might get to see a 6-hour broadcast of me going.
Sounds like me.
I do fall asleep on camera, and they have had to call Joe Dog to come in and shut the channel down while I sleep. So I'm an old guy. Let me sleep.
Yeah, gotta have your rest.
You can look me up on Amazon to find stuff that I've written. You can look me up on Bandcamp to find music that I've made.
I was going to talk about that too.
You can look for apelian-webzine.com and see some of the stuff that I have been basically publishing and sometimes editing and helping people that are starting out as writers learn what they need to know to be able to submit successfully to pro publishers and start selling their work. My greatest success email and my very least favorite email is when one of the writers goes, "Hey, I sold something." And I go, "That's wonderful. Now you'll never send us anything again."
Yep. Yep. Hey, don't feel bad. When I saw, I don't know what it was. Oh, it was one of my fans sent me an email, said, check this link out. And it was books in Walmart. And it was one of my books that's no longer in print at Walmart. I'm like, what the heck? How's that possible? But yeah.
Right?
Did I get anything of it? No. Anywho, I do have one question, Dan. How come we don't have your music on our station?
Nobody's ever gone to Bandcamp and bought any.
Oh well, we gotta rectify that.
It's free to listen to, so you can go through the entire catalog and pick and choose. Most of the individual tracks are about 50, 65 cents a piece, or you could pay whatever you want. Entire albums usually run $7 to $10, or you can pay whatever you want. I've had people for a $7 album pay me $20.
Oh, nice.
Hey, it I feel very gratified that they think that it's worth that for their entertainment.
Yeah.
Oh, and as to Apelian, uh, there's no fee to read the magazine. There's no fee for any of the writers to submit anything. I They keep all of their rights except the first electronic publication, which automatically gets used if we put it online. And there are no ads. As long as I'm alive, there's never going to be any ads. It's not Apelian's not there to make me money. Apelian's
Right.
there to get writers paid. That's it. That's the whole purpose of it.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, folks, we're heading out of here. Let's do this real quick. Yeah. Got to make sure you guys do follow that. And once again, Dan, thanks for joining us.
It was so nice meeting you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thanks for
make
inviting
sure
me.
everyone tunes in next week, because we have another friend of Dan's also, a good friend of ours as well. Miss Stephanie Osborne will be in the house, and we will be talking to her about some pretty interesting space stuff that's happening. You don't want to miss.
Interstellar Woman of Mystery.
That's it. Yes, sir. And we are going to have some pretty cool pictures that I can't wait to hear her talk about as well. So don't miss out on that. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week on Paranormal.
Good night.